We are excited to now have Rebecka Peterson, the 2023 National Teacher of the Year, joining Bob Cusack on stage.
Thanks, Sarah. So Rebecka, I've interviewed senators and presidents and never interviewed a Teacher of the Year. How do you become Teacher of the Year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every state sort of has a different way of selecting their state Teacher of the Year, and then the 55 state and territory Teachers of the Year do a portfolio. Then this year we went down to 5 finalists, flew us here to DC to do interviews and give a keynote, and then one is selected. But I always say I wasn't chosen because I'm like the best teacher, right? There's no such thing. I didn't win a competition. I was just selected to do a job this year.
And do you get a call? Is there an envelope somebody opens?
There's a call.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember much of the call. There was a lot of hyperventilating on my end.
Well, tell us about your background in teaching, and tell us about which I thought was very interesting in reading the background the staff put together, One Good Thing blog, and why you started that.
Yeah. So maybe rewind a little bit. I am an immigrant to the United States, and I'm the daughter of medical missionaries. So by the time I was 16, I'd lived in 4 different countries. And sort of reflecting on my education journey, I see how important math was for me. Like as we moved, math really grounded me. To me, there's this like meditative, rhythmic aspect about math that sort of lets me kind of dive deep into myself. And it was the security blanket for me as we moved. And then eventually, I think that security blanket sort of shifted into like a cape, you know? It was the superpower that I had. And that's exactly what I want my students to feel, that there is this meditative aspect of math. There's the security in it, but then there's also the superpower that it gives you. And I feel very strongly that math should be opening doors for our students. So I love mathematics. I have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in pure mathematics. I started my teaching career at the college level, and then after 3 years, decided to teach at the high school level. I thought, how hard can it be? Turns out it was hard. And I had one foot out the door. I really didn't think I was going to make it that first year. Then I serendipitously stumbled upon this community blog called One Good Thing. And it was a group of math teachers at the time that were committed to writing something good that happened in their classroom every day.
Every day?
Well,
almost every day.
Some of us were a little overly committed, and yes, every day. But we live by the mantra, every day may not be good, but there's one good thing in every day. And that quote, it just hit me viscerally, right? Because it didn't ignore the demands of my job, but it did insist on taking ownership of my day. So I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I just continued to write until I had written 1,400 good things from my classroom. And I really credit that, I think, is the intersection of reflection and gratitude to saving my career.
Now, you obviously love math.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have a lot of students over the years who've loved math. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with students who are like, math, cape, no, that's not me?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, as teachers, we know we have to capture a student's heart before we capture their mind, right? So to me, it's really important that I make those connections, that I learn my students' stories first and foremost, so that we can center their voices within our instruction. But then what I love about teaching math is that it is so ubiquitous. I mean, it is everywhere, right? Like, our calendar is based on time, which is based on numbers, right? I bet that when you make a decision, you analyze pros and cons, you weigh the risks, right? Maybe you've read an article and made a generalization or an abstraction. Like, we are doing math all the time. Everyone's a math person. And so that is what I want my students to leave with. I want them to just have this sort of broader sense of mathematics, that it's not just about computing numbers, it's about seeing the world through a really beautiful, ubiquitous lens.
Okay, so let's dive in to this. I know you've been talking about these type of issues, whether you're at the White House or visiting other schools. We'll talk about your travels in a little bit, but what do you think the education system is doing right, and where do you think significant improvements could be made?
Yeah, I think that as a system, we are starting to really embrace this idea that we need to personalize education. I think that the pandemic exposed that more than ever. And so I'm really so happy to see this shift of, again, learning our students' stories, knowing what they need as individual learners, and that we know that this one size fits all isn't gonna cut it, right? Where I really see, and this is maybe partially my own bias as a secondary math teacher, I really see a need for different pathways in secondary mathematics. We've been doing this sort of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2.
In that order, right?
More or less,
Pretty much, yeah.
Some states maybe flip Geometry and Algebra 2, basically since the 1890s, not 1990s, 1890s. And a few things have changed since then.
But what was that based on? I mean, I always assumed, I kind of did that in that order. Was strong in algebra, and maybe it kind of got weaker. But I thought they were building blocks. Are they not?
Yeah, they are, but there's just so much more math, whereas our introduction to probability and statistics and data analysis, game theory, number theory, optimization, there's so much.
And that makes it more interesting for the student.
Yeah,
right.
and I think oftentimes, I have a minor in music, and the way we teach music is there's these basics that all students need, right? Like they need to know how to read time signatures and keys, and they need to know their scales, but then students get quite a bit of autonomy, and it's like, what instrument do you want to play?
Right.
Yeah, and I just sort of wonder, what would mathematics education look like if we really sat down and said, what do our students have to know? And then, what would it look like to give them more autonomy? When students go up to my English teacher colleagues and say, I just don't like reading, my English teacher colleagues say, oh, we just haven't found you the right book yet. Right?
Right.
And so what would it look like when students say, I don't like math, and our response was, we just haven't found you the right problem yet?
Interesting. Let's talk about COVID. What was the effect that you saw at the local level?
Yeah, Oklahoma largely, I don't like this phrase, stayed open, but we stayed in person, or we came back in person that fall of 2020.
Quicker than other states.
Quicker than other states, yes. But even so, in my district, my local district, a third of our students still chose a virtual option.
Okay.
And so we all just felt really off kilter. Even those of us that were in person, sometimes our students would be quarantined for a month, 2 months at a time.
Sure.
They'd be in and out of distance learning, and there was extreme isolation. No matter how you slice it, we just sort of felt off. And there's a fascinating study out of Stanford where they scanned, I think, 163 adolescent brains, and they found that brains post-pandemic are scanning the same way that pre-pandemic, only adolescent brains scanned had they undergone abuse, neglect, or trauma. And that's really sobering as an educator, because it suggests that, maybe the brains of our students have totally changed. And so then the follow-up question has to be, what are we doing about that, right? And the good news is the science is really clear, and connection is how we heal. And so back to our discussion earlier, I think that the educators I work with, it's so clear to us now more than ever that we have to help our students connect with each other, connect with their teachers, connect with the content, connect with themselves, and connect with their communities.
What about the effect on teachers and the problem of, there's the problem across many fields, healthcare, physician shortages, nurse shortages, teacher shortages.
Yeah.
Where are we going with this?
Yeah, I mean, I say, in my state of Oklahoma, we are in a teacher crisis. 10% of our workforce is emergency certified.
And has that gone up, like compared to 3 years ago, pre-pandemic?
Yeah. In 2011, I think we had 30-ish emergency certifications, and now we have over 4,000.
Wow.
So it's a crisis. And then you add on this layer of that sort of feeling off kilter, right? And that we're often the front line workers for our students, and we're often holding so much for our students. But then when I take a step back, I wonder who's holding our teachers, and sometimes it truly becomes too much.
Mm-hmm. Now you're traveling the country. Now you won this contest. I know, not best teacher of the year, but that's got to be a little different for you, right? What have you learned on this kind of tour across the country, coming to Washington, going to events, and do you miss your classroom?
Yeah, I miss my classroom a lot.
But this is pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah. No, this is
Get
the
to go to
year.
the White House.
Yeah. This is a year of a lifetime for sure, and I know that it's just going to enrich my work as an educator. I think one of the greatest gifts of this year has been getting to connect with the other state and territory teachers of the year. Truly, any one of them could have done this job, and that is not lost on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, getting to be a part of that group, to get to be a part, I'm going to say we're a team, and the way they support me and cheer me on my good days and my bad days is like nothing I've ever experienced, and it just makes me even more committed to bringing sort of that kind of collaboration and teamwork to the local level, and making sure that locally the teachers know and are reminded continuously that their work is so important.
We'll open up to questions in a minute, but I do want to ask you a very important question. What is the role of parents?
What is the role of parents? Yeah, particularly in math education?
Particularly.
Okay. So I am a mom, and how we talk about math is so important as parents. And it just breaks my heart when I hear friends, parents say, I'm just not really a math person, I'm not really good at math, because it breaks my heart for them, but it breaks my heart for their children as well, because we, as a culture, have sort of decided that it's okay.
Right.
But I don't think it's okay to be like, I can't really read.
To give up.
Yeah,
basically.
but I think there's sort of, there's sort of this dichotomy here. And so as an immigrant, as a bilingual immigrant, I know language depicts culture, right? And so I feel so strongly that if we change the way we speak about math, it can change the culture around math. And so I really challenge my friends and parents to think about themselves as math people, to broaden their understanding of mathematics, and then also to stop speaking so much in binaries, right? Like I hear a lot like, you're an English person or you're a math person, right?
Yeah.
You're creative or you're analytical.
Right.
And that does our students such a disservice. The mathematicians that I look up to so much that solved incredible problems intersected that creativity and that analytical process, right? And so, how we talk about math really matters.
That is important. Let's open up for questions. If anyone has a question, we can get in a couple. Wait for the mic so we can all hear you, and identify yourself and ask a quick question.
Paulo Di Maria. I'm with the National Association of State Boards of Education. Rebecca, big fan of yours. I want to build on what you just said about this pernicious, cultural thing we have in this country, that some people just aren't good at math. Because in addition to parents who don't think they're good at math, I also think there are a lot of elementary school teachers who don't think they're good at math, and sometimes they project that on their students. And as you know, the tradition in this country is an elementary school teacher teaches all the subjects. And yet I've seen recently some elementary schools that are experimenting with differentiating, having math teachers at the elementary level. Can you reflect a little bit on whether you think that might be a good strategy worth pursuing in order to sort of get past that, some students just aren't good at math?
Yeah, yeah, I think, everything, of course, comes down to the local school and what your capacity is, but at my son's school, they do that starting in fourth grade, and I just think it's just beautiful because now you have kind of similar to what we do at the secondary level, right, where you can really kind of hone in on one or maybe two subjects and develop both a passion and like a skill for that. So where it works, I think it's such a beautiful model.
We'll get one more question, but a quick one.
I'm Bob Hershey. I'm a consulting engineer. How do you motivate the kids to show what's in it for them when they learn math?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's any secret, but again, it's learning about them first and foremost as human beings. I want my students to know how much I care about them as individuals. I struggle with it. We say this statement a lot in education, like building relationships is the best classroom management tool, right? And I just I hurt a little bit when I hear that because I don't think it's this transactional thing. I think that I operate at my best, they operate at their best when we are connected on this human level. And so I make it a real priority to learn them first and foremost as human beings, and then they really trust me, and I can really push them to some really big academic achievements.
That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. Well, your passion really comes through. I got to say that. Rebecka, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
If everyone could please join me in another round of applause for the 2023 National Teacher of the Year. So as we get ready for the next panel, I'm just here to remind you that that poll is still live, and we really appreciate all of you who have taken the time thus far to give us your responses. But if you haven't yet, slido.com, that's SLIDO.com, and use the code, the hashtag, #TheHillEducation. We appreciate your responses. Thank you.